Yo, what's cracking everyone? Ericship 111 here. So, as we know, the highly anticipated Forza Motorsport has released for all premium edition owners right now, and as I'm writing my review for the new Motorsport, surprisingly the one aspect that, in my opinion, Turn 10 has absolutely nailed is the featured spec series multiplayer. So far, I haven't had any network issues despite living in Australia, and the races have been very competitive yet clean thanks to the new driver rating system that has been introduced. However, with that said, Forza Motorsport is far from perfect. In my opinion, the Builders Cup does get a little bit repetitive, not because of the cars, but more so the lack of different track environments currently available. The car upgrading system certainly needs major tweaks to make it more enjoyable for all players instead of feeling like a senseless grind. But in today's video, it's time to talk about the absolutely outdated car models that Turn 10 are still using or refusing to update in their latest Forza Motorsport game that has just been released. So, the Forza Motorsport series has spanned over nearly 2 decades, launching its very first title back on the original Xbox in 2005, and arguably, in the eyes of many, peaked in 2011 with Forza Motorsport 4, where the series grew so big with such an eclectic car roster, huge variety of different tracks and layouts, many different car customizations, improved visual fidelity, to so much more. Now, it's important to note that back during the original Xbox and Xbox 360 days, technology wasn't as cutting edge as we know it today. Many of the cars and real life tracks that were featured in the earlier Forza Motorsport titles were captured and modeled primarily through the use of photographs. And while this method of capturing objects and environments and then transitioning them into 3D models was completely acceptable at the time, it's certainly not the most accurate. The developers over at Turn 10 also recognize this, hence why in 2011 with Forza Motorsport 4, the team began laser scanning, which would now allow cars and tracks to be captured and modeled to the utmost of details and accuracies. But the only cost was that it would be more time consuming. We know this because it was highlighted in one of Turn 10's behind the scenes videos for the release of Motorsport 4 and also the introduction of Auto Vista. For those who don't remember, Auto Vista was an unprecedented feature which allowed players to explore up to 26 newly scanned cars into the series across every angle imaginable, from its engine bay to the interior, even to how the cluster instruments light up when you first start the car. The vision for Auto Vista was huge, and it was a glimpse of how all cars in the series would be celebrated from here onwards. Then came the release of Forza Motorsport 5 in 2013. It was a title that was released on the new Xbox One consoles. It ran on an updated Forza Tech engine built specifically to handle the power of the next generation consoles. Auto Vista was now known as Forza Vista, and instead of just a handful of selected cars that could be explored, now every car in the title can now be viewed to the utmost of details. However, one of the main criticisms Motorsport 5 received was the downsize in car roster as well as track environments. The series went from well over 650 cars down to just 325, and also many of our favorite tracks disappeared too. And Dan Greenawalt, the creative director for the Motorsport series at the time, gave a very sensible answer as to the reasons why. He states, and I quote, "Some of the tracks needed updating, some of them needed light updates, and some of them needed heavy updating. Silverstone, for example, was completely recaptured. Several of our tracks were just plain wrong, either because they were poorly captured and technologies moved on, or the tracks changed like Silverstone," which I can totally understand. Another huge culprit was the Nürburgring. It was just so incredibly inaccurate in Motorsport 4, which was why it was introduced later on as a free DLC in Motorsport 5, completely recaptured with a new look. He also states that we're looking at laser scanning from everything moving forward. We want that to be the standard for the next generation consoles. Our goal is to not carry any old content over. And even with the cars, we did the same process. There were some inaccuracies and some cars were old spec that we'd updated from Forza Motorsport 2 to 3 to 4, but they didn't have the poly count where we wanted it, and they weren't as easy to up-res, so we just recaptured them. Some of them, the spec was good and we could add more polygons where we needed them, so it came down to this rating system, and any track or car that wasn't an A grade got either chucked or recaptured. Now keep in mind, these comments were made back in 2013, so then why after another decade later, 3 more Forza Motorsport releases, an entirely new Xbox console generation, are some of the biggest culprits with downright horrible car models still exist in this new Forza Motorsport, which didn't take 2 years to make, it didn't even take 4, but at least 6 years to develop. Now I understand that with the new Forza Motorsport's overhauled tyre physics model probably took a hefty portion of time throughout development, and is also the reason why many of our favourite real-world tracks aren't available at launch. It was simply because the new tyre physics model was no longer compatible with even some of the laser scan tracks from Motorsport 5 onwards. Now, whether that is the entire truth or not, I will give them the benefit of the doubt here, and it seems like a very plausible and reasonable explanation. However, car models like the Honda Civic Type R EP3, the Toyota Corolla AE86, the Nissan Skyline R32 GTR, Volkswagen R32 Golf, and the most notorious one out of the lot, the Nissan Silvia S15, just to name a few, which have been used since the original Xbox or Xbox 360 generation and were modeled primarily through photographs. In 2023, they just simply shouldn't exist anymore. When I heard that the new Motorsport was built from the ground up at the Xbox Showcase event at the beginning of 2023, these outdated car models was one of the main things I wanted to check out once the game launched. As many within the Forza community know about these infamous outdated cars, we've been asking for years upon years to just please recapture these iconic machines to the same standards as some of the newer cars the Forza series has introduced throughout the recent years. This, in my opinion, also goes against one of the ethos for the new Forza Motorsport, where car building and having a relationship with your car is important. And if you want me to spend time with my cars in your game, I think it's also fair to ask for the developers to provide us with the most up-to-date and accurate car models possible. Not an AE86 where the headlights look like this, or the Honda Civic EP3 Type R where it states it's a 2004 model, yet it's clearly the pre-facelift version with the wrong taillights, or the R32 Skyline GTR and the Nissan Silvia S15, where the overall proportions of the vehicle are just completely wrong. And if we go back to Motorsport 4's original vision with Auto Vista, along with Dan Grinewald's statements that were made at the time with Motorsport 5, never did I think, and perhaps even Turn 10 themselves, that over 10 years later, would these outdated, widely community known recycled car models still be present in the series. With all that said, however, there is a glimmer of hope. You may have noticed one car I omitted which, much like the Nissan Silvia S15, was heavily disproportionate to its real-life counterpart, and that is the Subaru Impreza WRX STI 22B. Perhaps one of the most iconic 90s Japanese cars ever to exist, and from the early days of the Forza series, has used pretty much the same exact car model throughout each entry, but only with upgraded textures. To me, the front was its biggest culprit. From the headlights to the front bumper, everything just looked a little longer than it should, and even the overall proportions of the car was just slightly off. And much like some of the cars I mentioned earlier, in Forza Vista mode, when you explode the vehicle, you can't see the engine bay. And that to me is the biggest clue as to which road-going production cars were reused from the super old days or not. But in the new Forza Motorsport, they have indeed completely remodeled the 22B. The first thing to notice is the rear bumper. You can see the details behind where the number plate sits. The front now is a major improvement where not only are the headlights and the front bumper sit proportionately accurate to its real life counterpart, you can even see all of the rad supports behind the front grille too. Of course, now we can explode the car and see the engine in its full glory, and overall the car just looks like how it should. But there is one thing to know. You might think that this new Subaru 22B car model was brought in specifically for the new Forza Motorsport, but nope, it wasn't. In an Xbox article, it was revealed that the 22B would feature a full modeled engine bay in Forza Vista mode for the very first time in Motorsport 7, and that the team travelled halfway across the world to source a completely original car, including all factory stickers with zero modifications, giving players a rare glimpse at the beloved Subi. But of course, once Motorsport 7 launched, the 22B was still using the old recycled model with no engine bay modelled. So really, the Subaru Impreza 22B has been planned for well over 6 years now, and finally it has made its debut into the new Forza Motorsport title. Now, overall, when it comes to recycled car models, generally speaking, I don't have a problem with them. There's plenty of cars within the Forza series that has obviously been used throughout many years, and I don't expect each and every car to be completely scrapped and remodeled for every new title or Xbox generation console. Cars like the Ferrari 458 Italia that were introduced back in 2011 still hold up very well for today's standards. I just want the cars that everyone knows have looked the worst throughout the series and have existed since the early days of the Forza series to be replaced. Turn 10, you know the cars we are talking about, but seeing as how it took at least 6 years for the Subaru 22B to be completely remodeled and actually brought into the franchise after the information was unveiled, honestly, at this point, I don't even know if cars like the R32 Skyline GTR or the Nissan Silvia S15 will ever get the proper respect it deserves in Forza. But anyways, I am a little disappointed that Turn 10 was willing to take shortcuts here with some of the car models, and I know that there are indeed more recycled cars that I didn't mention. If you guys want to share the car models in the comment section below, please feel free to do so, but this video was to remind Turn 10 about the vision or roadmap they had for the Motorsport series over 10 years ago, and that the Forza community recognizes when things aren't up to not just for the user standards, but the industry standards, especially for AAA game studio. Anyways, if you guys did enjoy today's video, please make sure to smash the thumbs up button as it really does help me out. And of course, if you guys want to stay up to date with everything Forza related, be sure to subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.